not put yourself forward in the king's presence or stand in the place of the great. It is better to be told, "Come up here," than to be put lower in the presence of a noble. Amen. Please be seated. In the wake of the Olympics, it just ended, about a week ago, we are filled as a culture with story after story after story of things of life of the athletes, don't we? We can almost tell them ourselves. We've heard so many of the 5 young ladies in the gymnastics team, or the swimmers, good and not so good. And the track and field athletes. I could go on and on and on. I know some of those stories. When I was seeking to be an Olympian myself, we need not share any of those. I didn't make it. But they are stories of life, are they not? Stories that tug at the heart, stories that are about life lived to its fullest, life that is filled with life. But sometimes life gets to be a little self-absorbed, doesn't it? We hear specifically of that one swimmer who has caused some national shame, you could say, Michael Lapke. One of the challenges, of course, is in all of life is pride. We want to get really excited when we do something really well, right, Rick? When you shot that hole in one? And it was a rarity, as are all of those gold medals and holes in one. I'll tell you, sports is one of those areas of our lives that you don't need to go to the Olympics to start to be built up, do you? There was a book back in the early 90s called Friday Night Lights. Does anyone remember? It turned into a TV show as well as a movie. And there was a boy, his name was Bobby. He had great potential. Amazing potential to go on and play for great programs and potentially the NFL. And one day he received a letter from a recruiter. And we can see the beginnings, and this is a real letter from a real recruiter to a real young man trying to make his stamp in the world. And this is what the recruiter said. The entire Houston Cougar football staff has been in the process of putting together the top list of high school senior football players in Texas. We can stop there and say we know how good they were. He goes on, Bobby, we feel that you are one of these few select players. Wow. Can you imagine being 17 and being told you're one of the best football players in Texas? The head will start to grow. Pride. Hubris is one of the fancy words, of course, of pride. It's one of those things, however, that starts to eat away at the inside, and the actions on the outside start to show it. No wonder the ancients, yes, the ancients came up with the 7 deadly sins. Hubris, or pride, gluttony, sloth, envy, greed, anger, and lust. I remembered them all. You should all remember them. They knew that there was something powerful that took us away from God when we engaged those overarching 7 deadly sins, that we started to put ourselves in the place of something, someone, some situation that we are not to be the center of. We may succeed here and there, but we are not the king, right? But when the 7 deadly sins were shared by the ancients to the moderns, pride, hubris, was the crown jewel. That which took the rest of them with them. Pride. But what about humility? Though it's not the opposite side of the same coin, clearly they, those wise one of the ages, kept saying, come on, find your feet on the ground, where you, where the group, the world, the nation is to be. Pride is not to infect the heart. Being thankful for a good performance is one thing. Making it our life is something else. And it doesn't stop at sports, does it? It could be in business or it could be in politics. God knows we know that these days. Pride and hubris fill sometimes our lives. And we no longer find our own home where we should, but trying to kick the king out of his spot. So in thinking about this verse from Proverbs, I decided to write it in my own language. So you'll excuse this. It's a little bit rough around the edges, let's say. So you think you're the best in the world and worthy of everyone's praise. You think you are better than all who have come before you. You think no one is your equal. Only fools live as though they are above the law, flying away from the trouble they cause. Humility will give you true freedom and honor, but disgrace follows as you flee and knocks one down, never to get up again. Proverbs doesn't mince words, and I hope I gathered that into our language. I could have put in the president instead of the king, but it may not have had the same oomph. Later on in that story of 44 boys on a Texas football team, a father relates this about seeing his son grow. But while it lasts, athletics creates this make-believe world where normal rules do not apply. Standing in the place of the great is what at times we encourage our young athletes to do. Standing in the place of the great is something we may find ourselves doing from time to time as well. My mom said to me on a regular basis, "Ricky, you're too big for your britches." Did I ever learn what hubris and humility meant? You may have learned that as well from your mother. Regardless, it is humility in the place of the heart that Proverbs shares with the people who listen 25 or more 100 years ago. The wisdom of the ancients continues to this day. So when we hear Jesus this day, when we hear that gospel lesson say so clearly about the exalted and the humbled and the humbled and the exalted, we start to see that it's not just Jesus who is saying these words. It is not just that which Jesus thought, oh, I think this is important. It is a divine reversal of our society, is it not? We know what it means to get ahead in this world. Whether you're an athlete or a business person or an academic, or we could just go on and on and on. Sometimes it's just rubbing elbows, getting close. Sometimes it's taking a few steps on a ladder. Jesus said, do you see all those people doing all that? Do you see that? Do you see how we as humans want to achieve power and status without earning it from the inside, but taking it from the outside? That divine reversal says that power that we wish is not just not the power of God, but it's not the way in which we are invited into relationship with God. And that is the hardest thing of all. Humility, that sense of heart in its right place, is when pride and hubris slip away. It's that time in which we find ourselves not by saying, oh, I'm just going to go to the bottom and let somebody pick me up. It's not about a feigned humility, but it is about our life, our station in life as a Christian person, as a person who follows God. It gives us solid ground to stand on, from which God invites us to come up. And Jesus only calls us back to Proverbs. He only says, folks, look back. Look back at the ancients. Look back at the people that we listen to, the people that we hold as holy, the statements, the love, the joy that we are given for hope. I tell you, when my mom would say to me, Ricky, you're too big for your britches, it always made me step back. Those 7 deadly sins can truly take us away from the center of life, because we'll try to stand where it's not our place to stand. But when God says, come up here, we will find